is basically paired in such a way that we can precisely transfer the data without any deviation, without having any kind of entropy variation. Like, and then probably we can say that, yeah, this is the efficient way of learning the things. So I'm going to talk today on that particular aspect of, we can say, technique called supervised technique. Why it is necessary, basically, because we all know that nowadays we people are, if you look at, you see a broader spectrum other than what we are, like using our email or something like that, you see the internet security and everything, blah blah things. Machine learning is mainly being effective in our main part called industry 4.0. So somewhere you see now we people are in the 4.0, the fourth revolution of our industry. And since you see here, like the three major revolution had already happened, right from, you see here, when we were there, you see the beginning where mechanization happened and steam power were used actually for, like power transmission from source to the entire, sorry, the entire output. So that concept of, like mechanization in the manufacturing was there in the first part. Second, you see here, when we, like with the population, the mass production starts right from our car manufacturing to bulb manufacturing to any kind of manufacturing. So that, you see, the mechanization is now streamlined in terms of their assembly line. We can say stream part, you see, in the process or product feature, you see here, and accordingly the energy were distributed to make, you see, the things available in the mass production. So various machines were channelized in that way, and we were using that. So second revolution, and first and second was there only about the optimization of power and the space utilization. The third was there somewhere in the involvement of the automation, and that automation which we thought of that just using the computers, like, and so just using, you see, the robotic arm or humanoid robot is the, like that was, you see, in the last 2 decades we were thinking that this is the automation, but that was a semi auto, or we can say automation, or some kind, we can say that we were in the onset of some kind of automation. Then the fourth revolution started when we had, you see here, lots of things around us using the internet. So then it is called, you see, the IoT, the Internet of Things, which were mainly providing the domain of interacting the dead bodies called the things in such a way that they can interact without having any kind of, like the human intervention. So that is, you see here, only being possible with incorporation of not the computer. It is not only, you see, the, we can say, the internet or the networking features are there from the computer. It is mainly from the sensors which sense all the things which are coming to that dead object. Then you see the data which were recorded and processed. So we have, you see, the signal conditioning unit, signal processing unit, and we have, you see, the control feedback feature or microcontroller or whatever, you see, the things, the microprocessor features were there. Based on that, you see here, the entire things were processed. And then accordingly, the actuator means what exactly the kind of output which we want, you see here, in terms of either, we can say, mechanical motion or any kind of thing. So that entire configuration or the key part, you see here, were, like introduced in the fourth revolution, and that is only being happen when we are getting the data in terms of big data which we are saying, and we can process using machine learning or deep learning. So you see, when we people are only talking about the classification or any kind of clustering features of the data, then we can use, you see, the machine learning. But when we are going for the image processing or any kind of, which we can say, you see, like the images are there and we just want to discretize those things and process, you see here, in the time and the space domain, we do need some kind of convolutional feature, and then we are using, you see, the deep learning part. So since you see here, this is a very broad spectrum which we cannot, like covered in that particular way within, you see, the time of 1.5 hours, you see here. So like in this way, generally we are going to discuss, like only on the focus of the machine learning. So the IoT, if you look at that, there are two main parts. The one side which is there, you see here, that like the cloud computing, where the space is there in the virtual domain, and all the processing and all the storage features are being there in terms of whatever the size. And why these are being needed? Because you see the algorithms which are being used either for, we can say, whatever the data, not only the single data, the lots of data are coming, like in your email, you see the fruitful mails are there, some spams are there, some advertisement is there, some kind of, you see, the dedicated features are there. How you can simply, like classify those data? So in the smart sensor also same things are there, that you see just like the human body, we have eye, we have our ears, we have nose, we have tongue, like, or and we have the skin. So there are 5 sensors at a time, you see here they are working, and whatever the things which are happening you see here to your body or through surrounding interfacing is there, we are getting you see lots of data now on our machine, like our head, the brain. It has to simulate all the things which are coming to us and take an actuation or the decision. So somehow when we people are there, somewhere you see we do need some kind of sensor fusion. So the sensor which are simply giving us the kind of information during the interfacing of surrounding two system, we need to now fuse those data through using algorithm. So these algorithms, which are generally termed as the artificial intelligence features, without having like human intervention, we people are trying to now simulate those things. So somewhere you see here, we are not going into the mechanical domain where you see we can say the maintenance features or big data features are there. But right now, they are the two big pillars you see here for our IoT, which is a very common nowadays buzzword actually in our like engineering terms. So generally we are basically flowing from the sensor to, we can say, the automation, where you see the advanced algorithms are being adopted, either machine learning or deep learning. So when we people are there in the machine learning is some kind of, we can say, subfield of computer science, where the datas were coming, you see here, in terms of, we can say, the datas were given to computers or nowadays in the machine. Through that, they can learn, they have some kind of ability, or they develop the ability to learn the things without explicitly program for that kind of actuation. So that was basically, you see, Arthur Samuel, he was a computer science engineer. So he was basically a mathematician rather, and he gave this kind of concept to that. So that's why you will find that most of the algorithms, they have rich computational mathematical algorithms for linear, for non-linear, uniform, non-uniform. We can say any kind of features of the data which are there, they can be, you see, used to learn the things. So when we are going, there are some tasks involved in that, which you might be knowing about the basics, that a computer or machine program is set to learn from the experience. So generally we know that a skilled person, when we are saying the skilled person, is only which has certain basic knowledge and having some kind of experience. So even when we people are talking about the human aspect, which has a living feature, in that also we can say only a skilled, semi-skilled, unskilled, based on the basic, we can say, the basic features or basic knowledge plus experience. So first is the experience with respect to some class of task. That is very important, because we need to classify that what exactly the tasks which are involved in processing in the sequence of that. So that is very important, that it is not that we have lots of data and simply throw the data to the machine, and that can be, you see, the machine can learn over the over the span of time. No, we need to clearly classify. Like if I'm speaking about something, that say if I am a computer science engineer, or if I am mechanical, electrical, or any kind of engineering, that I need to give the information within that particular domain. It is not that I'm speaking right now in some kind of finance or some kind of economics. So here also we need to precisely classify some classes of the task, and then we need to relate that what exactly the experienced or the skilled person with those tasks, what is the performance measure. So that is why you see here the various algorithms were developed based on these three main parts, that what is the experienced features are there through which we can give a training to data, a training to the system, or how much the system can learn from those data over a particular class of tasks with the using of their performance, whether it is a 90%, 95%, 98% of the performance itself. So generally when we are clubbing together, we are using the data for answering those things, the training and predicting feature. So that means you see here, once our training is there, now one can easily predict that what exactly, you see here, the things are going to happen if it runs or if it goes like that. So then in that case, you see here, if you can predict or if you can see that this is the kind of fault which is there in the system, the fault could be anything. We can say the defective features are there in any mode. That can be first analyzed, and then it can predict that if it goes like that, the system will fail up to that particular desired performance. So this is what you see, the primary, we can say, introductory feature of the machine learning. And when we are going for that, our main process involves starting from the learning, in which we need to improve like the task using the experience. So in that, you see here, first of all, the improvement in the task with respect to the performance measure based on the experience. So these basically, you see here an algorithm which gives you some kind of, we can say, the steps to process. So here, this is what things are. The first, we need to collect the data. This is very important because you see here, the data are there. Now, which data precisely is really important? We need to fix, you see here, the priority. So for that, after collecting the data, whether it is coming from sensor or whether it is coming from any source, now we need, you see here, the pre-processing of data. So clean data means now we need to classify that what exactly the type of data, whether the data has some kind of entropy, the data has some kind of noise, or the data has some kind of, we can say, a heterogeneity. So we need to maintain the homogeneity after cleaning the data. That is very important because you see here, say if I'm speaking and say if I started speaking in the Chinese or in the German language or in the French language in between, our brain is not trained to that kind of thing. So somewhere you see here these disturbances called noise, we can say white noise, whatever it is you see here, or the entropy, because the entropy, why I'm saying entropy, because this is a kind of disorderness which happen to these data, they have to be rectified so that a homogeneity can be maintained in the entire space domain where the data are being collected. So high dimensionality spaces are mainly using to fix the data in an appropriate manner. Second, the featuring feature. So how we can make the data more useful, because the data has lots of uncertainty. The data has lots of, you see, we can say, the nonlinearity and non-uniformity. So now we just want to use in optimum way of those data. So that's why you see the things are coming. So every machine learning algorithm is having some kind of optimization with the constraint, because all the data we cannot make it easily that okay, now separate those data and how the separation based on the classes. So we cannot do that. So that's why you see here in the algorithm, whatever the algorithm which we are using, it has and have, you see here, some kind of optimization. The optimization means objective function plus the constraint part. And then you see here, based on that, we can make the prediction, or we can evaluate that what exactly you see here the entire model having the efficacy and what the efficiency involved in that. So primarily, if we are looking in a more detailed way, then you see here this architecture is like that we have, you see here, any kind of machine which is or thing, we can say in IoT, the thing which is interacted to the real world using various sensors. So the sensors could be anything, just like the human body, as I mentioned. Sensors could be anything, because what exactly our precise features are, which we are just wanted to make the machine, updated from that. So whether we can say the sensors could be, we can say based on laser technique, based on, we can say, the induced part, like the transduced phenomena, we have a capacitive based, resistive based, or we can say the inductive based, or the sensors could be in the piezo based. Nowadays, you see, we have very smart materials and the sensors are there. So what is there? And second, the cameras, or we have, you see, lots of database in which you see here the computers, they are getting, the data from the bank or from any kind of operations. So the first, whether the data is capturing or whether the data is collecting, that is a two thing. Once the data is coming, now we need to pre-process the data as the data processing features are. So in this case, you see here, now we need to see whether the data has what exactly the magnitude, whether it requires the magnification, attenuation, filtration. So what exactly the things are there. So this is one part where the pre-processing starts, about to choose an appropriate, we can say, conditioning feature, the signal conditioning, which we are generally saying that which type of signal conditioning is requiring to magnify, to amplify those things, to attenuate, to filter, or to what kind of, you see, even in the filter, high pass, band pass, low pass, what exactly the kind of. Second is the feature, because we know that there is some kind of randomness, there is some kind of uncertainties involved in that. So it is not always, you see, that you will get the data in a steady state manner. Even that the data, say if the data is coming about, you see, our stock market, we don't know what are the factors which may affect directly about, you see, the progress of the stock market or any kind of bank performance or anything you see here. So we need to now extract those features which can give us precisely that what is the optimum information is available, and then accordingly we need to go about the feature selection and feature projection. Because these feature selection and projections are simply giving us an appropriate space domain where the dimensionality reductions are there, so that we can spread, you see here, like you can see this part, where we have, you see, a clear separation of three different segments of the same data. So that means, you see here, these segments are involving or having some really fruitful information about that. So if they are clustering together, then it is very tough for us to find out that what precisely these data are indicating about that. So that is why, you see here, if we want to make the data more useful, we need to go for the feature selection and feature projection. And once you do that, then we are going for model learning. So this model learning is absolutely based on the data which we are using to train them or to learn them and to testify. Because this is very important that once we are giving the data, now you see here, since we have, you see, the reduced dimension data, now we are classifying those things, that whether it is based on the classification, regression. So this is called the supervised, or whether it has a clustering part. Sometimes you see some interrelations are there in the data that it cannot make up appropriate classification. They are mingled in such a way that that cannot be make them in a separate stage. Like you see, sometimes you see in your email, you will get those features which are not even, like fruitful to your email. Or sometimes you see the even the like your main key emails are going into the spam, because they are absolutely interrelated to that. So you see the classifier or any kind of, you see, the mechanism which we are adopted to separate them is not able to recognize those things. So that's what you see, like in the modern learning, we need to fix, you see, that what exactly the types of data which could be used using, you see, like the different features, so that we can simply, like make our model as efficient as it is. So in that model testing, we generally using cross validation, bootstrap, like that. And finally, we are making prediction based on that. So that is, you see here, the one algorithm, which is very simple, you see here, but it requires lots of, like we can say the sub steps to make the data available for efficient prediction about the entire process. So when we are moving towards that, again, the machine learning having three basic, we can say, categorization. One is the supervised learning. The name itself speaks that it is under supervision, where input output pairs are there. There is a known input and there is a known output. Now we need to make an interpolation function in such a way that we can get the desired output based on the known input. So we can either go with the classification or regression based. These are the two broader, we can say, the techniques to process the data. So in this, you see here the classification, if we are going, then we have, you see, lots of even, like we can say the algorithms are there, which are generally, like using in this. So we can say the support vector machine, the Navier Bayes, and all that part, auto regression, the kernel based neural network, and all that part. Or else even we can go to the regression based, where the decision trees are there, neural networks are there. So what effectively they are saying, that how the learning, and through the learning, how they are mainly, like predicting those things. So these are basically clubbing in such a way that we can have efficient output based on the known input and desired output layer. Second is the unsupervised. The unsupervised means, you see, the output is not absolutely being maintained, because we don't know exactly that the known input is there. We just want to process using, you see here, our main learning process. So in that, you see here, since there is no clear classification, regression features are there, we have somewhat more clustering phenomena. So we cannot go with the desired output or the desired known output kind of thing. So generally we are going for the kernel based. Now I am going to discuss in this class that what exactly the kernel based. So here we have k-mean clustering, k-medios clustering, and there are lots of, you see here, that how the kernel based phenomena which could be used to separate the data which are there in the clustering form. This is a very high dimensional nonlinearity existed in that. Or else generally we people are using the principal component analysis, PCA, or even we are using the SOM, like the maps are there, in which you see we generally, like trying to classify, trying to make, you see, the cluster separation. So this is the unsupervised. Sometimes we are getting less efficiency, but they are more effective when we have, you see, the clustered form of data. Finally, we have, you see, the reinforced learning. The reinforced learning is nothing but, you see here, in which we have some kind of agent, some kind of environment effects are there, because we all know that when the process is happening, we won't get the steady phenomena every time. So somewhere some kind of agent through the surrounding or through the environment has to have, you see here, like acted in such a way that we can get some kind of precise learning part. So this is also, you see, some kind of, we can say the output is now sensitive based on the feedback. So somewhere you see here, like you might have heard about the feedback control, where we have a kind of, the junction where plus minus things are there. So if we need some kind of plus or minus, it could be done, you see, during the process. So similar thing is there, since the reinforcement is there, some kind of middle, like we can say disturbances are there, and that can be rectified straight away. So we have, you see, the Sursa lambda, where the lambda is, like introducing in that way, so that we can modify that, or the Q learning feature. So when we are going in this way, this is what the things which I was talking about, that the supervised learning, we have input output pair. In unsupervised, only input is there, and reinforcement, some kind of input, which is obviously, and the feedback is there, which is coming through the environment, or we can say sometimes trial and error. Then in this case, when we are in the supervised, we are mainly trying to see, supervised or unsupervised, we are trying to see that the learning and acting phases, how they are absolutely being, we can say, meshed there. So under supervision, generally we are giving the training, you see here, so that we can make the efficient algorithm. In this unsupervised, since the training, since input output bridging is not there, so it is mainly being learned by the experience. Or in the reinforced, it is mainly being learned by the environment as an agent, so that the feedback can be improved. Or if it is not there, you see, in the agent, then we people are going for the trial and error. Introduce something, you see here, and see that whether it is diverging or converging the entire our output part. So these are the three broader categories which are being involved in that part, you see here. So the types of machine learning problems in which you see here, when we are going in the supervised, as I mentioned, these are mainly learned through the example, because the desired output is there, and we want to predict that it has to have some kind of 90-95% efficiency or anything. So simple example, like if you want to say that through the machine, it could recognize that whether the thing is coming, you see, is a cat or dog. So that means we need to give a clear-cut configuration about their appearance, that this configuration reflect to the cat, this configuration reflect to the dog, or these males are spam or not, or predict the market values of anything you see in the household locality, or we can say any kind of things which are mainly being there, that what exactly the kind of environments are there. So that means you see here, we are trying to now formulate a kind of, the problem in which generally we are treating those things that you see here, they have to give appropriate information which could be categorized in that way. So this is one thing you see here which we are requiring. Just a minute. So this is the machine, sorry, actually I got a call actually. So this is, you see, the machine learning, which is there, which is mainly falling in the supervised learning. So as I mentioned earlier, that in this case, the dimensionality can be easily, like the space dimensionality can be easily used to segregate those things. So we have, you see, the two main algorithms, which are mainly based on, or various algorithms which are mainly based on the two main key parts. One is the classification, in which the output is a discrete variable. The discrete means it has a unified way to identify that. Like you see the cat or dog, or we have an apple, or we have, you see, some kind of things, you see, which can be, it doesn't have that, like the kind of continuous part. So the it can be easily classified. Like you can see that there are two datas. One is this kind and another is this kind. So since they have, you see, their own discrete phenomena, and they are using the space within their own part. Again, I'm giving you an example of discrete. Like the car is moving. You can say that this is car, and the same time the car and a bike is moving. You can say one car and one bike is moving, because they have their own shape. They have their own discrete features to identify, to recognize. But if I'm saying, you see, the water is now moving, or the blood is moving, so you can say now it is a continuous operation which is happening, you see, all the way. If I'm asking now, you see, that what is the level of water, you can say with what reference. Or if I am saying, you see, that the water is moving, what is the velocity of water? You can say at what time, at what part actually you are asking. Say in the river, like Ganga river is moving in all the way. So whenever there is a continuous movement, just like in human body, if you want to have the ECG, it is not by simply putting, the sensor we could get. We just need, you see, too many sensors to find out the flow of the entire, we can say, the blood. Similarly, whenever there is a continuous movement, we cannot simply classify based on their appearance. Then we are going for regression process. So the regression process mainly happening within the two main domain. One, that is the time domain, and second, that is the space domain. Like you see, the example is giving the price. The price is mainly, you see here with the time, say today the price of gold is this. Maybe tomorrow it may be like plus or minus. So the time is now giving that one. Second, the temperature. In this room, you see the temperature, the average temperature is this one. If you go outside the AC, you won't find that one. That means, you see, now the space domain, once you change the space domain, there is a change. So when the output is dependent on the time and the space domain, we need to use the regression. If this is not there, like the cat or dog is there, whether they are in the room or whether they are outside, you can easily recognize that. So then in that case, we are going in the classification based. So in the supervised, where the known output is there, we can use these two main process to separate the data and to make the space available for classification or the regression based. So this is there, you see here again, this is another way of segregating that we have a separator which can separate, you see here, the two main data based on the classification. So this is the supervised way of doing that. And in this case, we can do unsupervised, since it is not in my domain. But anyway, since there is no desired output, we need to now give the training based on the available data. Then in that case, you see now the data which we are using has to have a minimum tolerance. They have to have a clear identification about that, because if it has a variation, if it has any kind of uncertainty involved in that, then you see here, because there is no known output, then we need to just learn from those input datas are there. So like you see, I have a photo and want to put them into 20 groups. Now it is really very typical that we need to now see, we need to classify that what exactly those photos are. Because if those photos are indicating in the similar information, then it is very hard to put them in that, because they have some kind of interconnectivity. So you see here, again, this is a very typical part, that if the data has some kind of clustering or interconnectivity or interrelations are there or interdependent, anything which you can say, then in that case, we cannot go with the previous thing like classification, or we can say some kind of regression. Then we need to go with different ways of segregating those data which have these kind of natures. Like you can see this one. So now we just want to use the data which are in almost in the clustering from here. Now here we need to frame a virtual domain group, because we know that they have some kind of hidden correlation and we need to reduce the dimensionality. So somewhere you see here, we cannot make it like a separator here. That separate, like the previous case, a clear separator was there, a classifier, I would say. That is not possible here, because they have some kind of, like the relationships are there. They are connected together. So here those algorithms are not working. Finally, this is, you see, the reinforcement, where now we just want to show that how exactly, you see, the things which we just want to predict about those things, how exactly it is interacted with the environment, or how exactly, you see here, they are mainly being forced by the environmental part. So here the environment is giving the feedback. So somewhere this environment is acting as an agent, and then accordingly we need to enrich our algorithm which doesn't have a known output, but there is a known input kind of thing. So this is basically, you see, the things are. Now in this, when we are talking about the machine learning, the first part is the algorithm selection and the training. So our main goal of training is making correlation prediction as often as possible, so that, you see here, we can simply relate that if this happens, then this is going to be like, say, based on the available parameter, the things will be okay, things will not be okay, things will be okay with that much, you see, the error kind of that. So this adjustment has to be there with the prediction part, because somehow, you see, the algorithms which we are maintaining or which we are developing, as I mentioned previously, that whether it is on the discrete based or whether it is based on, you see, we can say some kind of regression part, they can be only updated with those data. But we all know that realistic system, any system which works on the real, they have huge amount of uncertainty. So always remember, any algorithm which cannot be 100% efficiency, they have always some kind of incremental improvement. Now this algorithm, how much incremental improvement is adjusted or evolved, you see here, that is based on, you see, the tuning of hyperparameter. So there are two types of parameters which we are generally classifying in that way, so which I'm going to tell about. So here the making prediction, this is what you see the algorithm which we are generally using, the labels and the samples, so that we can simply say that this is the kind of, you see, the data which we are using to train certain system. In that particular, now since there are lots of, you see, the variations are there, we need to extract the features. Now the features are of various kind. It is all depending on, say, like if I'm talking about the stock exchange, there is a huge uncertainty. And if I'm asking you now plot, it started from morning 9:30 to afternoon 3:30. If you plot those data, you'll find lots of variation within the time domain. Say if I just want to plot that with the time and say this is stock, any stock, you'll find that lots of variations are there. Now, if I'm asking to use these data, it is very tough, you see, to see that what exactly the information existed within the data itself. Because you see, we know that lots of, like the fluctuations are there, some government policies, sometimes the markets, and this whatever the features are there, they are all varying, you see here. So, like whenever people are trying to do that, we are trying to find out, you might have heard about, you see, that we are trying to see based on the maths that whether the mean or median or mode or root mean square or skewness, or we can say whatever the kurtosis, crest factor, various features, extraction features are there, which we are using. Meaning to that is which parametric feature is giving us an optimum information that we are using. So remember, you see here, for training purpose, it is totally depending on the extractional, that how you are extracting those important features which are there in the data, because data are lots, and based on the sampling frequency and the sampling part, we need to extract those features, and then we are giving the model to train them. Second, you see, once we train them, then we are using this train classifier for our prediction phase. That again, you see here, whether we have used this algorithm, how much, you see, the accurational features are there by giving some unknown part. So same data, say, you see, we have, you see, the 10 data, I'm using 6 data for training purpose, 4 data for, or 3 data for prediction, and 1 data to see the accuracy. So that could be there, you see here, in this kind of making predictions. So as I mentioned, that through single part of, like parameter, that is not possible. So we need to categorize the model parameters and hyperparameters. So these, you see here, like the model parameters are absolutely based on that what type of system is there. That means what exactly your problem domain is. So in that case, you see here, we can simply see that since this is what the model parameters which have some kind of steady nature, not as unsteady, not nonlinearity, not, we can say, uncertainty, then we can fit those parameters into some set and we can use directly. But hyperparameters are very sensitive, where some kind of adjustment is requiring to tune that particular system, because our main features are that we need to train the system by lots of, we can say, the varying phenomena, so that if any change is there, it could be easily recognized. Like a machine is working, we know that we switch on the machine, it is giving 50 hertz of exciting frequency. As far as the 50 hertz is there, whatever the force which is transmitting through, we can say, mechanical motion, through any motion, you see here, that is all right. But if sudden jerk is coming because of fault, because of some sudden failure of power or something, if the machine cannot recognize that, then how is that machine is going to, like we can say, react against that kind of sudden part. So these, you see, the hyperparameters are simply giving us that up to this tolerance feature, there is no problem. The machine can adjust itself using all those odd features. So that is where the things are that we are trying to now figure out the model parameter, and through that the model training is there, and hyperparameter, through that the hyperparameter tuning is there. So these things are basically giving us more efficacy and efficient algorithms towards that. So model parameters are simply making, say, the separator, as I was mentioning that, you see, the separator was there. There is one kind of data. So this separator can be easily being designed based on the model parameter. That this is my classifier, and this classifier is mainly in the X domain, X, and this is Y. So this Y is moving with that, and this is what my weighting function. W0, W1, whatever you see here, the mean part and all the variation, they are absolutely having a discrete variation. But the hyperparameter, that how many iterations are there, what is the test size, what is the maximum depth, anything, what is the randomness is there, what are the neighbors features which are directly or indirectly connecting to each other, what is total transmission through the components, how many components are there. So you see here the entire performance of machine learning is mainly depending on not this classifier, because it is a linear classifier, or even actually any kind of, you see, the classifier margin, but mainly of choosing these parameters, the hyperparameters. They are absolutely defining the efficiency, or we can say performance, of those particular machine learning in all, we can say, simulated one or unsimulated features there itself. So we can choose for best hyperparameters. We can simply define an objective function, as I mentioned about that. Then we need to give that what exactly, you see, the grid search, random search, or the gradient descents are there. So both the things we can clubbing together, and we need to see that even we can make, you see, all those, like the complexity which are being involved in within the space and time domain, but we need to see that it should not be computationally expensive. That means, you see here, it should not take more cycles to train the things, and it should not incorporate all sort of variabilities, because if you are considering all sort of variabilities with the parameter, I'm giving you an example, very common example. Like for our mechanical, you might have heard about, you see, in our 10+2, that we have pressure, temperature, density, viscosity, and all that part. They are all scalar in nature. What do you mean by scalar? That they do not vary in the space. Whatever the pressure is there, that is scalar. But at the same time, you see, if you are talking about velocity, if you are talking about acceleration, if you are talking about force, if you are talking about energy, they are vector in nature. So that means they are depending on the space also. And the third part, which is most important, is about, you might have heard about the stress and strain. They are tensor domain. Tensor means they are totally depending on the space. So we need to see that what type of parameter which we are trying to use to train the system, and what exactly their sensitivity towards the space and time variability. So accordingly, you see here, because if we are going towards that, these two things are absolutely giving us a kind of constraint to achieve this objective function. So you see here, now these are the various, we can say, supervised machine learning algorithms are there. The support vector machine, the random forest, the linear regression, which is based on the regression based, you see, the naive based, kernel based means, k nearest neighbor, knn part, and these things are there. So they are mainly using, you see, the data processing feature using regression either or classification, anything. I am going to talk about, you see here, the time is there, about support vector. The support vector machine is a very common, you see, the algorithm I have used for various our machinery, not only for the paper publication part, but also, you see here, for our real industry purpose. There you see we have the data which is mainly using the entire space, and we just want to reduce the dimensionality of those things so that we can make, you see, a proper classifier to separate a healthy data or defective data for that machine. So in this case, you see here, our main objective function, which I was mentioning previously, is about to use the maximizer with the minimum margin. So this which classify the two data, it should be, you see here, like we just want to see that this margin having the M using the low dimension, and this dimension is mainly given the name behind, you see, the we can say, like the developer, the Wapnick and Chernovsky. So this low VC dimension is our main optimum feature, which simply classify the hyperplanes available within, you see here, the classifier, like the data on both the side of classifier. So in this set, these we can say blue and red which you are looking, these are mainly, we can say, the subset knowing the support vector. They are defining that how much the margin should be there, because we just want to maximize that. So here, if you look at, say, we have, you see, the data. These are the data which you can see. Our supervised machine learning is there, which has only the two main part. One is the classifier, or we can say the regression. Now, if I'm using these kind of data, a linear regression is good enough. So this is what we can say a classifier is there. This classifier, which is having the equation of wx plus b equals to 0, the linear equation mx plus you might be knowing that mx plus b equals to 0. So this linear equation is good enough to segregate this plus sign and this minus sign. The plus sign is wx plus b greater than 0, minus sign is wx plus b minus less than 0. So now you see the data can be easily classified. This is the easiest example of that. But in this case, you see here, you see here, this classifier is good enough, or this is an optimum function? No, this is not an optimum function. So because if you see here, this part, even we can say this part or this part or any this, like the line, that is also valid to that one. So that means you see here, simply using a single line is not capable of making the margin of this plus and minus separator. So here we are using, you see, the alpha. So this is the simple equation fx, this one sine of wx plus b equals to 0. If it is equals to 0, we have a linear classifier. If sine is greater than 0, then we have plus sign. If it is less than 0, we have minus sign. So this is one function, but this function has to be judged by this alpha, and this alpha is defining that how much margin which has to be required to see the subvector of this subvector and this subvector, which are giving us, like an appropriate margin function called the support vector. So you can see this one. So here we have a margin of a linear classifier, which are simply giving us a width of that particular boundary, in which you see the data can be separated out in that particular dimension, which is provided there. So in this case, now you see here, our main objective function is to maximize the margin, so that whatever the classifier which are being there, you see, this is what you see, the alpha, which is being defined by the width. Our main intention is to maximize this one. And if the problem is falling in this one, we are saying this is, you see, the linear support vector machine algorithm, because the linear classifier is there. So we can simply go for our objective function. So here the math comes. Now the filter is designed based on that now here these are the support vectors are simply giving us the main points of the boundary. These are the boundary problems. So here the boundaries are simply defining that this much margin is to proceed, you see, a segregation of data, whether we can say fruitful data or faulty data, spam mail or real mail, whatever the mail, you see the things are there, we can simply classify into two classes. So here you see the main objectivities come here, that we have our main objective is maximize the margin. Now here, since we are using only equation, so it works on the empirical relation. You know the empirical relation, like f equals to ma or e equals to mc square. They are working absolutely okay if there is a linear features. But if it is a not linear feature, then we need to make certain changes in these empirical relation called the correction factor. So this is a very standard engineering problems which we are saying. So if you are going with this equation, this we can say algorithm, we have a linear support vector part, in which this is, you see, my classifier, one set of plus sign, one set of minus sign. So you see here, this is what the overall we can say the equation. It simply gives us the two predictive classes. One predict class is +1, one predict class is -1. So these zones, whether we can say a fruitful mail, spam mail, whether we can say faulty or healthy data, any kind of thing, we can simply classify into using that. So these are the equation. Now our main intention is this margin, how this margin should be there. So this is the margin width M, and this margin width is mainly depending on that one, that how this W inversely proportional to that, how this W is to be chosen in that way, so that the segregation can be easily done using that. So when we are doing this, our first part is training which is based on the linear support vector machine. Having optimum function is maximizing the margin, we can say margin of separator. We have this part. So for training, we people are generally using, like in the linear classifier as this one. For positive cases, this is one kind of thing. For negative cases, this one. And for all cases in the data, whether it is faulty, healthy, spam mail, real mail, whatever it is, you see here, this is what the things are. And we can simply go with the margins. So this problem is a convex problem. So for those things you see here, if you just want to go to get an optimum solution for predicting the classes without fiddling and you can say the learning rates or VK-date feature, we are generally using the quadratic programming. So here the backbone of any linear support vector classifier is we are generally using the quadratic programming, where our objective function is to maximize the margin constrained to based on the what exactly the separator features are there for classifying those data. And for testify, again we are going for the same, that you see this is what our main linear classifier equation. Now we just want to like this is, so if the data follows on that one, no problem. But now the data falls on plus sign or minus sign, we can say that yeah, this is what the testing features are, that we trained this, and now it can be easily say that based on this equation, it can separate that you see here whether it is going on plus sign, so the positive zone, it is going for negative sign, the negative zone. So overall, you see here, we can say for all training data, this is the equation which we are generally using for a linear classifier, and we can make you see an optimum function for maximizing the margin, and this is what the equation. So you see here, the fancy features are altogether different, but main part is the quadratic optimization problem. That now you see here, if we want to classify a filter design, which gives us, you see, the maximum margin part, we need to minimize this part and which is subjected to this part, because this all part for all data, this is what our main features are, which are giving us all the constraint that these are the two different type of data are there. One is falling plus sign, one is falling minus sign, and for all data they are being there. And our main intention is to maximize the margin, which is mainly there you see here about that. And since you see here, it is coming in the lower zone, so we have, you see, objective function minimization of this part, because if it is minimized, the margin is maximization. So with that, you see here, we can simply solve those problem using, you see, the y and x, they are linear, and this is what the alpha, that what the variation is there within that, and alpha must be there, it cannot be zero, remember. So like with the non-zero, you see here, we can simply corresponding to all the support vector, and we can simply find out the classifying function, appropriately classify, you see here, all the data, whether it is going plus sign, minus sign, and we can simply go with that. So this is one kind of optimization problem, and they are simply giving the data into two main part, xi and xj. I and j are the unit vectors, simply giving us the dimensional feature of the variation of data into two main unit vectors part. So this is one. So as far as you see the linear problems are concerned, there is no like features. But now you see here, if we have the data of this kind, where the separator, like this is the separator, this is the width margin. But if they are classifying, so as far as these things are there, we can simply make, you see, these things. But if we have, you see, the data which are generally falling, you see, here in between, though it is not, you see, the clustering part, but they have, you see here, their own discrete phenomena, they are basically available. So if I'm using a straight line, that is not suitable. So in this case, we need to map that. So even the another type of data is this one, whether one variation is this, another variation is the, but they are falling in this. So if I'm using the equation, that is not even sometimes, like we can say sustainable within the high dimensional space. So for such cases, again, you see, we can see these feature spaces where the data are there in all four quadrants. Now, how to choose a proper, we can say, classifier or filter, so that it can be filtered out properly. So even in that case, you see here, when the entire dimension, this is, you see, all four space, this is 3 space. So this is 4D, this is 3D, they are being varying like that. It's not only, you see, when we have this kind of part, they have crossed, you see, the other dimensional feature. So when this is there, we need to go, you see here, some kind of nonlinearity, which nonlinearity means the high, like you see, if I'm talking about yx plus mx plus y equals to, we can say anything. If this is their linear equation, that is all right, because they simply define the relation between x and y. But if this is there, where x and y all are being there, we need to go to the y square equals to 4ax like parabola, x square plus y square equals to r square like circle, hyperbola. So all these high dimensionality features are now incorporated to make the data's separation. So like this one, a circle, or this one, where you see the quadrant features are there, and we need to simply make the things in that particular way of separation. So for doing this one, we are mainly going for kernel trick. So that's what you see, you might have heard about k means, k things like that. So kernel, if it is a linear classifier, it is very easy for the kernel features that you see here. We can simply choose, you see, I and j unit dimension, and based on, you see, their variation, we can simply put together. But if you see the data which are not being mapped by these linear equation, we are going for high dimensionality, then these individual functions are there. Sorry, this t is here. So these individual functions are there. So that's what you see now. We need to use an appropriate kernel function which can justify the variation of these data into high dimensional space. So for that, As far as the linear is concerned, there is no problem. For if any higher order is there, then what exactly, like you see, if I am saying this y square equals to 4x or x square equals to 4ay, this 4ay, that means you see somewhere the x is varying in a square way, somewhere the y square is varying like that. So that means somewhere the one parameter is varying with the higher order, another parameter is varying with the low order, one dimension. So this is called, you see here, the parabolic variation, or we are saying even x square plus y square like that. So either we can use, you see, the polynomial order, and then we can spread that using the Taylor series. And then we can go up to some order where the variation can be accommodated. Or if it is not possible, then we are going on the radial basis function called the Gaussian. Gaussian is one of the important part there. Wherever you see the variation is random or some kind of, you see, the non-uniformity is there, we people are generally using this one. Where we are generally see, like looking at the density feature sigma, and then how exactly the varying part is there in the nonlinear order. So this is e to the power minus delta x square, and what is the delta x? Xi minus xj divided by 2 sigmas, and sigma is giving us sometimes average, sometimes RMS, what exactly the density where maximum information is available towards that. And this is kernel function is being defined. Or else even we can go to the sigmoid one, that you see based on, you see, the sigmoid function, that how exactly you see the variation is there within that part, like you see here, if it is varying like this one or anything you see here within that, you see, we can use this part. And based on, you see, the tangent function, we can see the distribution with respect to I and j and the constant one. So again, what exactly the variation it could be used. So this is one, by the way. So this is, you see, like the support vector machine information. Now we are going to an example of that. Say we have, you see here, for machine motion where we are capturing the data. The data could be anything now, since we generally are working in the domain where, you see, the machine is giving us some data about its movement, and what exactly the movement is there, that is the force, that how much force is being transmitted through that. If you if you just stand there with the machine, you will find that, you see, some constant force, some constant vibration is experiencing by you, whether you are there with the machine of any process, or whether you are there in the train, or we can say in the bus or something where. So human is always experiencing vibration irrespective of whether, you see, he's working on a machine or not, whether he's driving a vehicle or he's sitting in the vehicle, whatever it is. So now you see here, since the machine which gives us, you see, a kind of motion in which the force transmission is there, we can map that force, and these force signature means the entire, like you see, ECG is a signature of our heart, EEG is a signature of our brain. So just like for machine, there are signatures which are mainly giving us about the healthness. So say this is there. If you look at that, the acceleration, this is acceleration, and acceleration is always giving us about the inertial forces. You might be knowing about that, you see, F equals to mass into acceleration. So acceleration is generally giving us the inertial forces there. So when we are transmitting that, they are indicating that this is the normal operation. Once the degradation start, like you see, sometimes we are saying, you see, there is a defect. So here up to that, all the emails which a computer is receiving, say in example analogy, they are all good. But now here some spam is coming and they are being clubbed together. So there is a uniform motion is there, and we have some abrupt changes. This is called the degradation zone. And even this degradation is happening. So machine is running. It has the defect like the heart has. Sometimes you see the heart is, like pumping, its pumping capacity of in 90%, 95%, 60%. That means the human is moving, you see, human is working. Human is having the kind of, like all the blood motion, but there is a degraded way. And then you see here up to that point, after that you see here, it is indicating the fault failure zone. So there are two different conditions in which you see the machine is indicating that the force is transmitted with a huge amount of inertia force, and you see here this is a degradation zone. It is called the diverging zone. We have, you see, the diverged features there, you see. So because we just want to predict based on the machine learning, now we are using this data to train them. So now we can simply like make the predictive features based on, you see, the individual part, based on slight degradation, and based on the severe degradation. You see the severity. This severity is having some kind of clustering phenomena. So we need to now use an appropriate classifier so that they can classify whatever the data which are mainly coming as in a dense way. So these are all the data points you see here. They are giving us appropriate information. Then we can use anything you see here. There are lots of like the things are there. So if the machine is using up to this point, we can predict that how exactly it's going to fail, up to how much time will it require to fail that. And most of the algorithms are indicating that. So this is called the degradation evaluation. We are not running the machine. We can even run the machine up to this point or this point. We use the data of this and we can find out the prediction of that. This is called the prognosis. Remember, this is the prognosis of anything. So the prognostics are mainly depending on that how exactly the fidelity of data, means how accurately we are capturing the data and using that part. So this is one way of describing that how exactly the data you see in the another way. The previously I was showing the other part. So here also it is indicating clearly that if you run the machine after this much time, you see here there is a failure, and this failure is exponentially increased like that. So we cannot control that, and this is called, you see, the elastic feature, and this is called the plastic feature. Here also this is called the elastic feature, this is called the plastic feature for any machine. So this is the performance and the comparison based on the algorithm. So here you see we have a algorithm which simply precise, or we can precisely predict about the failure features of that. Even classification, whatever you see the data, the k medios you see, or k, this is the k feature, and they are clearly defining about, you see here, whatever the singular values are of these things, that how the data can be classified. So this is a clear classification. Even if they have any interconnectivity, we can make, you see, a centric feature there based on the k medios, and we can simply classify that whether this is indicating about the normal state or whether they are leading towards the failure state features. So this is also very important, that the clear classification about the data is very important, and that can be done using that part. And finally, you see here about, you see the, like all the integration feature when the machine is there, since I was all talking about, you see, the machine part. So in this case, we can simply use that, you see, whenever we are like using that particular concept, this is, you see, the degradation pattern, and this is, like using support vector machine, we can get the health indicator, this one. So these are basically the health indicator. Precisely you see that it is clearly indicating that this is where the degradation start. So if we run the machine within this much time, you see here we have all variations within the elasticity. If you run that up to this point, we have a degradation pattern from slight to severe, and we can see that, you see here, the severity is almost going into the plasticity. Beyond that, you see here, there is only a failure that cannot be retract back. You see this one if you run, and if you are going to the second one, precisely even that can be shown by other factors, that you see here up to this, if we run, this is, we have, you see, the elastic zone, then we have elastic plastic zone, and then we have a plastic zone. So this is one kind of, we can say, machine pattern. So that's why you see here I'm using these elastic plastic and all that part. But generally you see here, that means we can simply predict the health of a dead part based on whatever machines are dead, the key components are only working as the power transmission is there. But based on these algorithms from which are simply working on the sensor data, we can predict about the healthness, and we can simply say that these are critical features which are involving in any kind of degradation pattern, or using the health indicator. Like ECG is a health indicator, EEG is a health indicator, or various health indicators are there for different, we can say, like the health of our human being also. So generally you see for machine also there are lots of health indicators, which based on what exactly the type of sensors which we are using, we can simply go with that. So this is one, and then you see here based on the artificial neural network, we can simply define the based on the degradation rate and the rate, you see here, that how much precisely the available life is there of any component. Say this is one component which we have published in the neurocomputing journal, in which we were defining that from healthy components, say if you're bearing one component or gear, or we can say anything, you see here, from this we can simply say that how the classes are to be defined based on their response. So this was mainly being predicted by our algorithm, support vector machine and artificial neural network. Both were used, you see here, and we were almost achieved the 99.8% of efficiency for that. It is simply because you see here if what exactly our classifier and how many attributes which are being there you see here, and like and how when we are classifying those things, how correctly we can classify those data into the segregation. Based on that we can simply do that. So in this particular, this is my last slide, so in this particular way we can simply classify not only about you see the data of healthy or failure, but even in the subclasses, that this is class 1, class 2, class 3, we can simply segregate the data into those classes. And then this is very good like indication for the industry that if they just want to run the machine for an important part up to class 4, they can simply go up to this much percentage of class index, and this you see here replace or they can maintain that. Or somebody wants to go that no, we just want to go only up to the class 2 because this is very precise, and if something goes that wrong, then you see we cannot stop the machine, then they can immediately change you see here once the failures are occurring in between this particular way. So this is all prediction based on you see the data which were used. Since machine vibration is a highly complex data, so that's why you see here where appropriate filter and appropriate machine learning has to be adopted in such a way that we can precisely predict about the machine health or any human health also. We have also worked on human health, and we like the human features, so that can be used in any class. It doesn't matter irrespective of whatever you see here the part are there, only we need to see that how exactly the data should be handled, how we can segregate the data, and how we can use effectively about using an optimization function that you see here about training, testing, and validation feature. So this is all about you see here my lecture. Thank you very much for there. I am available now for any query. Thank you, sir, from my side. It's all from my side now.
Thank you so much, sir, for such a knowledgeful session. Dr. Harsha sir discussed about Industry 4.0, fourth revolution of the manufacturing industry. He talked about sensor automation. He explained machine learning process and supervised, unsupervised, and reinforcement learning techniques and types of machine learning problems. He described algorithm selection and training and very well explained the making predictions to extract the feature. And model selection and tuning, hyperparameters, support vector machine is very well mathematically explained by sir. Sir explained the failure response analysis. So I hope this session will be very beneficial to all participants. Now I request all participants to ask questions related to this session. They can drop their question in chat box, or they can raise their hand. We will unmute them. Yes, participant, please. Any participants?
Okay, no problem. Probably they don't have any question. No issue.
Sir, I have one question, sir.
Yeah, please.
Sir, my question is that how we can fine tune of the hyperparameters?
Actually, the main hyperparameters are mainly there to tune the system, because if the system has some kind of complexity, say like you see here, if we are receiving the emails, and in those emails some mails are well connected to each other. Say you see here you are sending with the mails, like you see the educational institute is sending with the mails for some kind of like the proper, but some you see some like the mails which are even under educational purpose, but they are only for advertisement, so they are clubbing. So my filter, or if my separator, the classifier which cannot classify that this is a fruit mill, like you see you send me the link, but if I am saying that okay this is just for the advertisement, it may send into the we can say the spam one. So if this is all depending on that how the model is tuned to itself, so that hyperparameters are there to tune the models in their efficient way, that how much tolerance can be adopted. So hyperparameters are very important, because the model parameters are all the design parameters or the conditions, because that has to be taken. But main important is the hyperparameters, and that's what based on the hyperparameters we are going for the sample size. Sometimes sampling is very small, sometimes if we see the complexity is there, or some uncertainty is there, or some randomness is there, then we are going for precise sampling part. Or even when we see that like the variation is quite high, then we are trying to modify our dimensionality space into we can say high dimensional, because the nonlinearity is there, some non-uniformity is there. So these model parameters are mainly there to tune those variation which are being there with the classifier. So that's why our objective function is mainly sensitive to like use appropriately or to adopt appropriately the hyperparameters.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Sir, I
Thank
have a
you.
question.
Yeah, please.
Normally, we using SVM support vector machine, we try to solve two class problem. But since we can go to hyperplane or we can have a multi-dimensional approach, can we solve a five class problem or maybe more
Yes,
using
absolutely.
SVM?
Absolutely, I have done that. Actually, like when we are right now, I was giving an example of two classes, and we are using the linear classifier and even the non-linear classifier. But sometimes you see here, when we are actually going into the problem, it's not about the only two types of two set of data. We may have more, like the sets of data, and we need to classify them. So for that, you see here the multi-classification features are. So our objective function will be in a very different way, in which you see here all the sets of variables are to be designed in an objective function, and the margin is to be chosen based on that how this dimension, which is we are saying like the higher dimensional feature, is to be incorporated. So then you see here this quadratic problem is to be in the enlarged way, because we have, you see, the multiple the variational features are there in that. So generally in our mainly in what I have used basically for machine vibration, we have lots of data. The data is coming from various components of machine. So this is not a one kind of data. We have lots of different kind of data. Say right now I was showing about the machine in the bearing. Even in the bearing, even in the gears, even in the shaft, even in the we can say any kind of clustering features, they are coming together from their sensors. We need to classify them. We need to make, you see here, choose appropriate classifier to separate them. So that is, you see, the support vector machine is also available for these multi-classification features. That is there.
But sir, for non-linear functions, is the SVM means there will be some limitations. So I just wanted
Yeah,
to know if
certainly.
you can
Certainly.
highlight
It is.
some of the limitations.
Mm-hmm.
If you can highlight some of the limitations, for example,
So
the
first
objective
limitation,
function
the
versus,
first
yeah,
limitation is that whenever we are going for the nonlinear part, say if I'm saying even the nonlinearity of second degree or third degree, the cubic space is there. In the cubic space,
yes,
we have the eigenvalue of three kinds. Now support vector machine has to design, because if I'm saying eigenvalue, that means they are truly representing that system, because they are satisfying the equation. So then in that case, the support vector machine has to recognize that all three values in the dimensional space are the true representation of that variability. Sometimes support vector machine is putting those eigenvalues or those eigenvectors into the different dimensional features. So this is called the misclassification. So then we
yes,
need to
yes.
see that,
There
like
will be
if we
some.
are going into the nonlinearity where the non-uniformity is there within the space, we need to see that what type of nonlinearity is existed, and accordingly we need to use, you see, the margin using alpha, and there is another factor that is called beta, which enrich intermittently, you see here, about those kind of misclassification.
Yeah, but in misclassification, sir, but there will be challenges of accuracy also, right? There will
Obviously,
be
this
some
classification is
challenge of decision function.
this classification is an indication of obviously it is efficiency. So you see,
Yes,
there are two things. You are only talking about nonlinearity. Nonlinearity is having even a limiting features. It doesn't matter
yes,
much, you see,
yes, sir.
because if we have main problem is the randomness. The randomness,
Yes,
even any classification, regression, or even clustering part, the randomness creates much of the fuzziness part. So that has to be handled properly. Again, that is depending on that how much variation or how much uncertainty is involving in the data. So nonlinearity is to be handled properly. There is no problem in handling nonlinearity. We have handled lots of nonlinearity. Only what I learned from my experience, or whatever the features which we have done actually, like in the classification regression part, the problem comes in the randomness.
yes.
Yeah, that is there, because in that you see some kind of impulsive features are there, some kind of huge amount of excitations are there. How to recognize? Machine learning cannot recognize. So sometimes you see here they are almost throwing out all those kind of important information which are supposed to be classified or which are supposed to be recognized by that machine based on the support vector. So that's why we are generally using different activation function using neural network. And nowadays even support vector machine is not, we can say, 100% accurate. There are various modifications are there in that. Since it was based on the first part, and I use the support vector machine is very popular. So in many cases this is very accurate, like for predicting the features or predicting about, you see, the behavior of the system based on the data.
Even sir, face recognition or some NLP also, SVM has some good applications.
Yes.
But the challenges is, yes, of course, the sample size. Uh, the means pre-processing is required in such cases, or
Yeah,
we can
absolutely.
use.
Absolutely, pre-processing is utmost required. Without pre-processing, even, like, because pre-processing is mainly giving you, how do you, like, even say if there is some kind of non-linearity, or there is some kind of non-uniformity, or there is some kind of uncertainty is there, until unless if you are not doing pre-processing, you cannot filter it out, or you cannot do some kind of attenuation, which are mainly disturbing the entire data. So that is the entropy variation. We need to go for Shannon entropy. Generally, we are saying Shannon entropy is
Yes.
there almost, you see, for that kind. So we need to handle that how much energy is available with that particular signal and Shannon entropy. So for appropriately choosing an indicator, we need to first do the pre-processing. That is at most required for any kind of, irrespective of whether the data is linear, non-linear, or we can say random or uncertain, whatever it is. It doesn't matter.
Sir, if we go for hybrid classification, what are the different models which support? One is linear regression, which support
Yes.
SVM, or which can be there. Any specific model which is, as per your knowledge,
it
in
is
your
all
research, which is
depending
very
on,
good?
yeah, actually, because we are generally going for some kind of, you see, the hybrid features. We need to see that what exactly, because sometimes the hybrid features are almost adopting based on the nature of data. Say simple an example, if I'm talking about, you see, like if we are using, say, velocity, and we have acceleration, sometimes velocity and acceleration is giving an appropriate indication. But if I have, you see, some kind of voltage deviation because of some displacement, this displacement is, or distance variation is some kind of, like the data which indicates only about certain information. So if, and there you see some kind of hybrid approach is requiring, because if I'm only using some kind of displacement data, that is not good enough for me to rectify all those things which are coming with the signal. So
There are
for any case,
challenges. Yeah, there are
yeah,
challenges for
challenges are
applications.
there, and you need to
Like,
incorporate. That's what you see here. The reinforcement comes for such cases only. There the
yes.
environment, or there some kind of agent is required to enrich, you see here, our algorithm intermittently. Obviously that is required, because until unless if you are not enriching that, and like we can say algorithm, you won't get
Sir.
all the features which are being there. So that is at most
So
required for that.
sometimes, in pre-processing, people remove those as a part of noise, or sometimes do some
What remove?
pre-processing removal.
What remove?
So
What remove?
like you are telling sir, there are some additional data, like you are talking about signals where noise are one of the part. So
Mhm.
sometimes, in pre-processing they remove the component. It is advisable to remove that component in pre-processing, and or rather we should carry them as a different class.
No, then you
What
need to
is your?
classify, then you need to
Yeah.
characterize. See, you need to characterize the system's performance based on what exactly you are receiving. Say, if I'm receiving the healthy data, I need to choose that with the healthy data, if the defective feature is coming at lower frequency, at some band frequency, or at higher frequency. So in that case, you see here, I can choose a filter, or I can attenuate that, or I can decompose the signal. I can even use the algorithm which can be simply focused on, like you see, like again, I'm giving an example, very good example for that is, like the wavelet. Why we are using wavelet? Why we are using empirical mode decomposition technique? Why we are using STFT, the short term Fourier transformation? If you are an electrical or electronics engineer, we are really using, like the microcontroller. So why we are using that? Because we know that with the routine continuous manner, we cannot recognize those abrupt changes. So again, this is very important part, you see here, that whenever we are going for, you see here, these kind of identification which are only coming intermittently or abruptly, you see here, with some impulsive function, we need to enrich those things by adding that. Filter choose, attenuation, amplification, or any kind of, you see, the things which is called signal conditioning is totally depending on the nature of data. What people are using, they might be knowing about the nature of data, accordingly they are choosing an appropriate these kind of signal conditioning technique.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for
Thank you.
highlighting those issues. Thank you. It
Thank you
was
so much.
Nice interacting, sir. Thank you.
Sir, there is another question in chat box. I am reading the question. Which method is used for which cases? Where to use SL, USL, RL?
Please, could you please repeat that? I didn't get again. Please
Yes,
repeat this.
sure, sir. Sure. Which method is used for which cases? Where to use SL, USL, RL?
Which method is used for what? Again,
Which
there is no
cases?
thumb rule. There is no thumb rule for any. It is not like that. You see, if I am saying this one and go and use that. Again, it is depending on what is the nature of data which we are generally using. This is very standard problem. You see, again, if I say that use this one, this is not an appropriate way. Again, you see here, if I'm using, I need to check the compatibility of those things, that whether I'm using this separator or classifier feature is good enough to make the data separate in an easy way, or whether the data is there in the clustered form, or some kind of interrelations are there which could not come in the proper way and there is a hidden relationship. So if I use, so just like previously somebody was saying, you see that if you use the filter and some important information is loose, then what will be done? So we need to characterize those features first, that if I'm using this technique, will that be okay with appropriately processing with signal conditioning or signal processing, so that I can get the appropriate data. So there is no standard feature. We need to check appropriately. That's what you see here. If I'm saying, if I'm simply converting, you see the time domain data into some frequency domain or something, Laplacian operator or Fourier transformation or something like that, I need to see that all those stationary, non-stationary, or we can say continuous data should be converted appropriately into the required segment. So that is all depending on, say, that's what you see I told previously, that if I'm processing, say, pressure, temperature data, they are scalar nature. If I'm processing, say, velocity, acceleration, displacement, they are vector quantity. If I'm processing stress strain data, they are tensor. So if I say that if my data is so much sensitive to the variation of time and space domain, I have to choose, like the algorithm which can map all these variation into these dimensionality features. That is what the things are. There is no thumb rule for any kind of problem. One has to choose, one has to use appropriate adaptive algorithm for those kind of data.
Okay, sir.
Yeah.
Okay, sir. Thank you so much, sir, for your such a wonderful explanation to all participants' question. Now I thank you again, Professor Dr. S.P. Harsha, for such a wonderful session. Now I want to thank all faculty and participants to attend this session and have taken part in question answer session with great enthusiasm. Thank you all.
Thanks for the invitation. Thank you very much for inviting me on this platform and sharing my information with all others. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir, for giving the valuable information in this expert lecture. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much. Have a nice time.
So
thank you.
One more question. So we have one more question, sir.
Sorry?
We have one more question, sir. Supriya ma'am, please ask the question. You are unmuted, ma'am.
Sir, when we have a data set, how do we come to know that it is a sufficient data set?
You see, the sufficient data as such, you see, there is no, in that case also, if you have the data, now the important part is there, how to use those data for training purpose, for testing purpose, and for validating purpose. That is important information. So you see here, say, because as I mentioned that in supervised learning, we are going for the two main part. When we have, you see, the discrete data, we are generally we can use the classifier to classify them in a discrete manner. If the data are in the continuous manner, then we need to use the regression. So if you see, if we are going for classification, if we can make, you see, the data for a better classification with certain accuracy which you want, I think the minimum data is good enough. There is no as such in that thumb rule that, you see, if you use, say, the data of some kind of 100 or some kind 1024, 2048 or that kind of thing, it all depends on, you see here, the nature of data, that what exactly the data which is mainly of the discrete or continuous type, in that you see minimum disturbance or minimum, we can see, the variability is there. Then you see that you can use any kind of appropriate classifiers that can, like easily separate it out.
All right, sir. Thank you.
Simple example. Earlier the emails were coming only about, you see, when it was started, say, way back in 90s, you see, the emails were only coming from the main organization. So there was no as such use the spam kind of things and all. But now you see, when the flooded of emails are coming, Then there is the emails which are separate categories in that, because you see if the data are big data, it's really hard to handle them. And then for accordingly, you see if the data have lots of variation, then you need more data. Then you need to check your sampling size, so that you see here if the more faulty features are there, you need to go precisely towards the like the sampling, so that you see here within the sample you can say that you see if I'm using 25 or 30 or 50 samples, then out of those things you see here this much faulty or this much healthy features are in that. So then accordingly it all depends on the nature, that what type of variabilities are involved within the data itself.
All right, sir. Thank you. Yes, thank you.
Thank you.